My name is Matt, and I will be talking with Luke Rotta about challenges in the fintech industry and the efficiency and safety of software releases. I'm looking forward to our conversation today. A lot of interesting topics to cover, but maybe we can start with some basics, because I think you are the first person with whom I talk who work in trading companies from the tech perspective. So that's an interesting thing. So you work for Chicago Trading Company and CME Group. And I'm just wondering from the outside, because this is really a specific industry, what are the challenges of this business from the tech perspective that we don't see, from the outside?
Yeah, absolutely. Financial services, fintech, it's definitely an interesting space. It's a highly regulated space. So depending on kind of what your firm provides, right? If it's a bank or a financial exchange or a trading firm that's participating in the marketplace, there's different regulations. So the SEC, CFTC, like the Securities Exchange Commission, Federal Trade Commission, right? They have a lot of regulations, and so those can be hard to navigate at times. They can be roadblocks to putting kind of more modern development and operational practices in place. DevOps, for example, right? So right, DevOps is meant to bring ops and dev closer together. A lot of regulators, they like to see that separated, right? They want the developer in a specific role, and they don't want them to be able to touch production. So those things can be hard to navigate. I've been able to overcome some of those challenges in my career. So that's something from the outside, if you don't have financial experience, that can be a little surprising when you kind of walk in the door.
Do you have any specific, routines, processes that you have implemented for your dev team, to handle this kind of challenges that you have mentioned?
Yeah, absolutely. So, while the regulators like to see things separated, that can kind of force human-driven processes, right? And humans make mistakes, right? So, one of the examples of what I've been able to do is to put some automation in place that does a lot of checks that an operator would do when they're doing a release or a deployment, right? So a lot of times the operator doesn't always have all of the knowledge, right, of what has gone into that software, what were the changes. And so a lot of times they could be doing things kind of blindly, which could be actually more dangerous. So being able to tell that story is important, as well as building some automation to take the humans out of the process and put some more rigor and actually reduce the risk of the software release. So that also has empowered the developers to take on the releases themselves, right? So you can do things like put specific time constraints in place, or specific version. Maybe some versions are higher risk, and so you can put guardrails around that in your automation. But ultimately, this has allowed developers to get closer to production. They have more skin in the game, and therefore the quality of software actually becomes better. So it actually creates a really nice situation and a nice story, and you can document and show the automation and so show the guardrails, and that usually is satisfactory to any kind of regulations or audits that you're subjected to.
And recently, when we talked, we discussed the mission that you had to transform the department, right? Because you went into the department and you have to transform some best and implement some practices to improve the processes. And I'm just wondering, could you elaborate on that experience and what worked for you? What are the lessons learned for you from that?
Yeah, absolutely. So yeah, I just actually completed the transformation like in February of this year. So over it was like maybe 16 months or so, less than a year and a half of transformation, 14, 16 months, somewhere in there. But ultimately moved the team from a traditional kind of application support, IT operations or technical operations team where they're doing a lot of support and releases, and moving that into a development function and turning it into a site reliability engineering team. So definitely lessons learned there. Some of the things that I did to make it successful, because I think at least the feedback that I got, it was pretty successful from a leadership perspective, as well as those that were involved. So, really establishing what is the new mission of the team, evaluating skill sets. What is the current skill set of the team, and providing a training plan to fill the gaps, right? So that people had the opportunity to build the skill set. Hiring from the outside with people that have experience in site reliability engineering. That was a key success point, right? Helping bring in that knowledge and that culture, that discipline really helped as well. And then making sure that your partners within the firm are on board. They understand your direction that you're going. They're supportive of it. I did a lot of road shows talking about what is the current state, what is going to be the future state. Certainly keeping the team updated as to the progress, getting their feedback, trying to iterate on their feedback as well. And then some responsibilities needed to be moved to other teams. And in some cases, we just cleaned up responsibilities. They weren't really needed, servicing any value anymore. So the lessons learned really for me are just get as much feedback as you can. You can never get enough feedback when you're doing a transformation, and get it from all levels, right? People that are hands-on, junior engineers all the way up to, principal engineers, staff engineers. And then certainly your leadership, your peers, your the heads of areas, right? So really getting their feedback and keeping them in the loop. And then also trying to not push too hard, right, too fast. I think as I got towards the end, I started to maybe kind of rush it a little bit. And so I had to just slow down, do a little bit of extra communication to leadership and to the teams that were involved, and just do some additional checkpoints with them, which I think was very beneficial to make sure that it was truly a smooth process, and that people had a good experience through it.
And I'm wondering if you would get the same kind of mission, right, to transfer a department in the future. What would you do differently? Is there anything that you would change in your approach?
Yes, I think I would hire people sooner. I think I waited a little bit too long in the process to hire someone. I ended up hiring, it was at least 2 people to start, and then kind of built from there. But yeah, so I would hire sooner. I did some of this, but I don't think enough. Getting out, just people outside of the firm, right? People in my network, talk to them, understand, if they've gone through a transformation, what were their challenges. So I could have done a little bit more of that. I think overall it went pretty well. And I think the last thing that I would do is maybe just concentrate a little bit more on the finer details at the end. It's hard to catch and predict everything that people may think about or run into. I think I was pretty thorough there. But I think what I could have done is kind of in the final weeks or month of the transformation, especially at moving responsibilities around, just check in, after the first week. Hey, how's everything going? Are there any hurdles? What can I do to help? So those are the items that I think I could do differently to make it, like the perfect transformation, if there is such a thing.
I think there is no perfect transformation. So,
right, yeah.
And you mentioned a lot of about communication. So it's related to people, and usually this is the hardest thing in the role as a leader to figure it out and realize the task together with the whole team. And I'm just wondering, do you have your own strategies that work for you, like in regards how do you lead the people, how do you deal with the communication, maybe some processes, routines that you follow?
Yeah, so I did a few things. I concentrated on the team, explaining to them, everyone kind of understood the current state, right? I think at some points it was kind of not clear to people on, what is the future state. So making sure to have, whether it's through your weekly team meetings or kind of how often you do it. I set up some ad hoc things as well, but for the most part, just trying to communicate on a regular basis and get the team's feedback, as well as meet with people individually, because not everyone likes to speak up in a group setting, right? And so also taking that into consideration helps. So I met, many times with the entire team, and then met with individuals, as well as solicited, as I brought new people in, solicited their feedback. How have you seen this work? Where do you see the challenges thus far? And then, so that was kind of the team aspect. And then I also focused on talking to others outside of the team, right? Getting their perspective. Okay, what do you think the current team provides, and what do they do? And if that team wasn't doing that anymore, how would you feel about that? Would you miss that? Where do you think that function would move? How else could we solve it, right? So, so that was really insightful to get an idea, because the team function had been around for a decade and a half, right? So it was really ingrained into the firm, and people really had expectations of it. And so some of it was shifting responsibilities onto other teams or onto the developers themselves, right? So I wanted to understand how they felt about that and how that was going to impact their work. So that was very helpful for me to, really understand what I could do to smooth out the transformation, as well as it also identified some really cool pieces of automation that we built, which really smoothed things. It actually decreased developers' concerns, right? Because they didn't have to learn things; it got extrapolated for them in automation. And so, and the team that was going through the transformation built that automation. So they got to be empowered to be like, okay, yeah, we don't have to do this work anymore. That's great. I can do new and different work. So that was really powerful to be able to put kind of the team's destiny in their hands and be able to shape it themselves as well.
Speaking of the automation, which is, I think, absolutely necessity in today's work and engineering work, but there is a topic of AI that I always really like to tackle, and I'm just wondering, do you see any impact of the AI of the work that you're doing? Maybe you're working on some proof of concepts already.
Yeah, definitely. There's definitely a focus from my perspective in the firm overall on AI. We do have actually like an R&D team dedicated to looking at various AI solutions and how we could apply that to business problems or just to our own technology challenges or problems, right? So I think there's a couple areas where AI can really help, and I think we're seeing that already. One is people have questions, a lot of questions, right? Especially new joiners. How do I submit an expense? Or, hey, I need a new laptop, or can I get a monitor, or, all of these things. And so AI can really help answer, right? There's plenty of bots out there now that can, read your knowledge articles, maybe even your code base, right? And they can help point the person in the right direction without a human having to answer that. And so that's been decently successful. It's still building. I think we're still in early days there, but it's definitely helping. It's also kind of a fun challenge too, of like, this is the bot or the human smarter here, right? Like who can answer the question the best? So occasionally the human still wins, but so that's been really cool to see. I think that's definitely a way that can reduce kind of the administrative overhead or the servicing overhead of just employees in general. I think it's also helping increase people's knowledge set quicker and more efficiently. For example, if I'm a junior developer and I'm trying to figure out how to do something with a pandas data frame, a lot of times I would turn to my senior engineer. I'd maybe sit down with them and ask them questions. I could throw that stuff into ChatGPT or something like that, and get a pretty good answer back, right? It's not going to be 100%. I think a lot of times it's about 20% of the time maybe ChatGPT is wrong, but those things are kind of caught in a code review, right? But I think in general, it's just helping build people's knowledge set and making them more self-sufficient rather than having to interrupt someone to ask them a question. Sometimes maybe people don't feel comfortable asking the question, maybe they, so I think this is really, really helping, right? And then the real kind of face-to-face or virtual interaction is really kind of more of a deep dive, like, hey, these are the things I've already tried and this is where I'm stuck. So I think it's been very powerful for that. And then, I think it still remains to be seen exactly how we will apply it to like business problems. But I think certainly it has that capability of, maybe even kind of being able to describe like a trading strategy that you want to try out or something like that, and it kind of give you the framework for that. So lots of application here. I think ultimately it's really about increasing the efficiency of your firm and allowing you to really get your features, your products to market quicker, because you don't have all these other things slowing you down. You can get quick answers and you don't have to rely on another team or another human to sort of kind of help you along.
Cool stuff. I think it's a really useful application and really simple. So it reminds me, like 6 years ago, you would say like to somebody who is asking you the question that is pretty straightforward, like Google it, and then now you use the internal chatbot, right? Like an assistant.
Exactly. Yeah. It's very cool. It's very cool stuff. I think ultimately it's going to make engineers even better. And it's less about maybe replacing jobs and humans and things, and really just allowing them to work at a higher level, right? Because they don't have to deal with some of the nitty-gritty that maybe isn't super beneficial to them.
Yeah, I fully agree with that. I'm just wondering, I'm always like to ask this question, like, what is the hardest thing in your career that you have ever done, and what are the lessons learned out of it?
So the hardest thing that I've done is having to we've talked about transformation that I did, right? But prior to that, I actually had to, it was less about a transformation and more about a complete rebuild of the team, right? So sort of like a sports team where you kind of have to tear everything down and kind of rebuild it from scratch, right? And so that was very challenging. The team at the time had a lot of tenure. There were definitely performance issues within the team. The team didn't get along well with other teams. So there was a lot of challenges there to smooth all of that out. Ultimately had to part ways with some people, bring in others. Some people were actually able to kind of reskill and improve. And then spent, a lot of time working with other partner teams and rebuilding that relationship and trust. So that was at least a year and a half or so of, hard work each day, just trying to build relationships and improve things and rebuild the confidence in the team and try to build autonomy within the team and get the team to feel empowered. So that was very, really challenging work. I think some of the lessons I learned or the takeaways are, everyone should always know where they stand, right? Don't hold back or wait, right? They should always know where they stand. If you're raising the bar, they need to know where the current bar is and where the next bar is going to be, right? So that's really important. And then really taking time to listen to the other teams that your team is struggling with, and it's important to kind of listen to understand and not necessarily listen to respond. It's a slight subtlety, but it's really important to really try to be empathetic to understand what are the challenges they're having with your team, and just work to try to improve that. Come up with an action plan to improve that. Each day or each opportunity that you can. And so those are the big items that I learned from that. Definitely challenging, but made it through. And in the end, the team was rebuilt, and a much better performing team, and interacting a lot better with the other teams at the firm.
And we are now 2024. And what are your biggest challenges right now? What do you have on your plate?
Yeah, so in my current role, I'm heading up our testing and integration environments. And so the biggest challenge there is trying to satisfy everyone, every developer's testing use case, right? Everyone wants production level capability, but it not to be production, right? So there can only be one production that makes the money, right? Especially when you're interacting with financial markets. So the challenge there is, what data do they need? How can we replicate that data? How can we strip out the data that we don't need? How can we keep the environments reliable and not breaking, right? Because these are non-production environments. Software is changing. Software can be, by nature of it being developed and iterated on, right, it can be unstable at times. So how do we create automation to create, allow some stability in the environment? So I've been trying to take a lot of my production experience over the years and applying that rigor and discipline to non-prod to create some stability, so that at least developers have we can meet their expectation of the environment being ready, each day for them to use. And then really just all the dependencies and complexities that we have in our environment. We're kind of in between re-architecting large pieces of our environment. Things are straddled between on-prem and cloud. And so just trying to find ways to automate our manual processes and reduce the complexities that we have within, or at least try to work within, within the complexities that we have and reduce them where we can. So those are the big challenges right now. Ultimately, trying to increase the developer productivity and satisfaction through, more reliable and available and fully functioning, non-production environments.
And the last but not least, the question that I wanted to ask you is, could you recommend any books, podcasts, or maybe resources that have been particularly helpful to you as a leader?
Yeah, so I'm a big fan of networking. Getting to know others. It can be uncomfortable at times, right, to reach out to someone that you don't know and try to start establishing a relationship. So there's a book called The 20-Minute Networking Meeting. I've found that it's very helpful in helping establish a framework on how you approach networking. How do you go through a meeting? How do you start to build a relationship with someone efficiently and make good use of their time and your time as well? So that's something I've been recently focusing on, and that book has really helped. I think also there is a book out there called Good Power by Ginny Rometty. She was the ex-CEO of IBM for many years, right? So it's a book about leadership, and how to build teams, treat teams, empower them. So, as well as identify your own blind spots, right? And how to fill those with people around you, right? Because as a leader, you don't have it all, right? As much as you want to think you do, right? Not everyone is perfectly rounded. So I found that helpful. The Google SRE book certainly was helpful, as I was going through the SRE transformation. And then I think lastly, I spend a lot of time, well, maybe not a ton, but I spend a decent amount of time reviewing other tools, right? Just trying to keep a beat on what is happening in the various spaces, observability, CI/CD, developer tools, IT tools. And so that's been really helpful to understand what are the challenges that those tools are trying to solve. A lot of these kind of grow out of someone's experience that they had at another firm. So it's very interesting just to kind of see how people are experiencing the same type of challenges and how they could be solved. So that's been I think very helpful to me as well.
Great, thank you very much, Luke, for all the answers and insightful thoughts here. Appreciate our talk today.
Yeah, absolutely. I really appreciate you carving out the time. I really enjoyed the conversation.
Great, thank you.
Thank you.
Follow Matt on LinkedIn and subscribe to the Better Tech Leadership newsletter.